part of this community for over 50 years now. The journey that we have been on is the result of collaborative efforts between ourselves, Carillion, and the local authority. You can see for yourselves the outcome. Mr. Harris, our head teacher, is recovering from an operation and sends his apologies that he cannot be with us. In order to help us to celebrate such a momentous event in the life of the school, we have a series of entertainments for you. Our first piece is from Alex Brown, who is currently in Year 11. Alex is one of our house prefects. When she completes her GCSEs, she would like to study performing arts at Newcastle College. She will be singing her version of Promises by Adele with us this evening to share this splendid occasion with us. Now, I'd like to ask you to formally declare the school open and to say a few words about your own experiences in both sport and television.
So I'm sure that there's a lot of thanks to the governors and to the school, but also a lot of thanks to the kids for appreciating what they've got. Now, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my journey so that you understand really where maybe an Olympian comes from. London for me was my 10th Olympic Games. I did try to bribe your teacher not to say how far back my first Olympics was, but it didn't actually work. So my first Games were when I was 13 years old, and I made the Olympics in 1976, way back in Montreal. But the first Games that I remember were probably the previous ones to that, when I was only 9, and I remember Mark Spitz winning 7 gold medals, and this moustached person with 7 great big gongs across his chest, and thinking, well, I'd quite like to have one of those, I'm going to go and work. And I'm sure that this summer will have inspired an awful lot of young people to try to perform and be like Bradley Wiggins, grow some sideburns and win some medals for us, or, you know, Chris Hoy, or Sarah Story, or all sorts of amazing Olympians and Paralympians that just made us extremely proud this summer. I started working on the bid 9 years ago now, and when we started working on it, believe me, it was really tough, because the media in this country can be quite a challenge, and they really weren't on our side at all, and they kept saying, no, we can't do it. Now, having been to an Olympic Games in Athens and Sydney, I knew damn well that we could do it. Can you imagine how smug I was this summer when we did such an absolutely brilliant job? It was incredible. In the last 3 years in this country, we've built more 50-metre pools than we built in the previous 30. At this Olympic Games this summer, we had the biggest team that we've actually fielded for 100 years, and we've had the most successful. Does anyone know how many gold medals we won in 1996 in Atlanta? Anyone a great sports buff and can remember? Shout it out. We won 1. Yeah, well done. And that was Steve Redgrave's. How many did we win this summer? 29, was it? 29 gold medals. How amazing was that? I was so proud. Were you proud to be British this year?
Yes.
I know I done well. It was absolutely amazing with the Jubilee and everything else. It was a wonderful year. And, you know, it just goes to show how well we can put things on. And I brought my torch with me, because lots of young people love to hold my torch and to run around. And that's why I brought it. I brought it for people to have photographs and to pick it up and to feel it. But the torch must have come quite close by. Did you guys get it to come?
It actually came to the school.
It actually came to the school. It's fantastic. So you have seen one of these amazing things before. I thought after I'd bought it and brought it home I would be able to use it outside in the barbecue, but sadly they take the canister out so you can't light them anymore. But I was very privileged to be asked to run. I was asked to run by Cheltenham Racecourse, which is not far away from where I used to live, and I was running over the border just a few miles away. One of the big memories I have from the summer was getting on the bus with 8 other people, and we all had to tell our story. So of course they said, oh Sharon, you don't need to tell your story because we know who you are, but we'll stand up and tell our story. And there was a gentleman there that had given 50 years to community sport. So every year, for 50 years, every single weekend, he'd been at the rugby club, he'd been at the cricket club, he'd been at the football club. And without being paid, he'd been making sure that youngsters were involved in sport. There was another lady that had competed for her country as a blind Olympian in the Barcelona Olympic Games. But after she'd given up her sport, she'd kind of, I don't know, she'd lost her way a little bit, and she put on 10 stone, she'd become a bit of a hermit, she'd hardly left her house, and all of a sudden she discovered sport again when we won the bid, and she'd lost all that weight and she started to swim again, and that was fantastic, so she ran with her dog. There was another lady that had qualified for the Olympic Games in 1936, and London is the only city in the whole world to host the Olympic Games 3 times. There's been other countries, like America, but there's never been a city that hosted the Olympic Games 3 times. That honour only goes to London. And so she won her place to actually compete in the hurdles, but she'd also just qualified to be a doctor, and she'd been given a posting in Kenya, so she had to decide what she was going to do. So she went to Kenya, and she didn't actually get to compete. So there were all these amazing people that I was on the bus with, and it was extremely humbling. So I bought my torch, and I came home, and I went into the kitchen, and I've got a 19-year-old son, I've got a 14-year-old, and I've got a 5-year-old as well, but my 19-year-old son was in the kitchen. So I brought my torch, and I said, "Oh, Elliot, do you want to have a look at my torch?" And like 19-year-olds did, he went, "Yeah, very nice, Mum." And I put it down on the island in the middle of the kitchen, like I bet loads of you have got at home, got in my car, started to drive out of my driveway, looked in the mirror of my car, and there's my 19-year-old son with this torch running around my island. And she didn't think I saw, but I did. So that just goes to show how the torch actually galvanised us. Now, just a little bit of a word about sport and a few little anecdotes that my dad, as my coach, used to say to me. To be a swimmer, you have to train pretty hard. My daughter's a bit of an athletics champion. She's doing pretty well with that. And I have to say I'm quite glad she's not a swimmer, because 5 o'clock in the morning is quite tough. But so when I first started to compete, I have memories of falling out of a tree swing and putting my arms down to save myself. Can you imagine what I did when I fell out of this tree swing and I went like this? What do you think happened to my arms? I broke them both. I broke both bones in both arms. So I remember walking home, and by this stage I'd already been training about 2 or 3 years. And I walked into the house and I went, "Oh, Dad, I think I've done something to my arms," because it looked like a step. So I knew I'd done something fairly serious. And he said, "Oh, Sharon, support it with the other one." I said, "No, can't break that one as well." So I marched off to the hospital. They put plasters on my arms. 2 days later, my fingers went blue, so they'd set the plasters too tight. So you go back to the hospital, and cut the plasters, send me home again after they've stitched them back up, taped them back up. And then they rang up and said, "Oh, we didn't check to make sure that they were properly set. Can you come back in and we'd like to x-ray them?" So I went back in, and one of them wasn't set properly, so I had to re-break that arm and reset it again, by which stage my dad went, "You've missed a week's training, Sharon. That's rubbish." So he wrapped them in Tesco's plastic bags, and I trained for 3 months with 2 broken arms. So it was quite tough, my dad. 6 hours a day for 6 hours a day, 6 days of the week, and that was for nearly 20 years. So when people say nowadays, "Oh, how do you keep fit, Sharon? You know, how do you manage to stay in such shape?" I go, "It's money in the bank." 20 years of 6 hours a day. It's a little bit like a memory, keeps on going. My dad had this little saying, which I'm going to leave you with now, and then we can start doing some photographs and I can start saying hello to everybody. And please feel free to ask me questions in chat. I don't bite, honestly, absolutely don't. We're training very hard, and he'd come up to me and he'd say, "Gary Player's just won the American Open for a 3rd time, but for you guys we're going to pretend it's Tiger Woods." So Tiger Woods has won the American Open for a 3rd time, and a journalist walks up to me and says, "Congratulations, Tiger, you were really lucky today." And Tiger turns around and says, "Funny, isn't it? The harder I train, the luckier I get." And I'm a big believer in that. You only get out of life what you put into it. So if you work really hard and you're really persistent, then you get there in the end. And what you also have to remember in life, it's very unusual that everything goes your way. Believe me, after 2 broken arms and having to compete against East Germans most of my life, in my swimming career, not everything went my way. But the one thing I did do was get up all the time. And it's not always the number of times that you get knocked over, because you'll get knocked over lots of times in your life. It's about the number of times that you get back up. All right? So remember that. It's been lovely to meet you, and fantastically well done to your new school, and I wish you lots of luck and lots of success here. Thank you for having me. Well, I'm truly open, and I promise not to put salt in the stroke.